This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. And now, let's continue our discussion on the topic of election integrity, which is, of course, more and more important now than ever before, given the fact that the midterms are coming up so soon. And so today, let's begin our discussion over in the state of Georgia, whose state election board has just authorized an official investigation into the ballot trafficking that took place in the year 2020. Now, this investigation was actually opened as a result of this complaint letter right here, which was sent to Georgia's Secretary of State. And it was written by an organization called True the Vote. This is the election integrity organization conducting all of this research. And in this letter, they laid out what they discovered took place in the Atlanta, Georgia metropolitan area. Here's how this letter begins, quote, "Following a detailed account of coordinated efforts to collect and deposit ballots in drop boxes across Metro Atlanta, True the Vote obtained publicly available surveillance video, as well as commercially available cell phone data, which revealed concerning patterns of behavior consistent with the reports made to our organization." Now, just to pause here for a super quick moment. As they alluded to in that opening sentence, True the Vote was able to figure out what was happening in Atlanta using three primary methods. First of all, they were able to actually interview a ballot mule, meaning someone who was trafficking ballots for money. Secondly, they used trillions of unique cell phone ping signals to retrace the steps of the ballot harvesters. And then thirdly, they reviewed over 4 million minutes of surveillance footage in order to see what was actually happening at the ballot drop boxes during the time that the cell phones were saying people were going there. And so let's go through what they found using each of these three methods, starting with the person that they were actually able to interview. Here's what True the Vote wrote in the letter, quote, "Acting upon information provided to us, True the Vote's contracted team of researchers and investigators spoke with several individuals regarding personal knowledge, methods, and organizations involved in ballot trafficking in Georgia. One such individual, hereinafter referred to as John Doe, admitted to personally participating and provided specific information about the ballot trafficking process. This information was provided under agreement of anonymity." Now, I just want to pause here for another quick moment. There's a footnote in this letter explaining why the identity of this particular individual was redacted. And it's because they wanted to, for one, protect the individual's safety, as well as to make sure that he feels comfortable speaking about committing a crime, something that he wouldn't likely do if his identity was publicly available. Regardless, let's dive into what John Doe was saying actually took place during the year 2020. Here's what he said, quote, "John Doe described a network of non-governmental organizations, otherwise known as NGOs, that work together to facilitate a ballot trafficking scheme in Georgia. John Doe claimed to have been one of many individuals paid to collect and deliver absentee ballots during the early voting periods of the November 2020 general election and the January 2021 runoff election. While acknowledging that others might view his actions as inappropriate, John Doe did not seem to understand the unlawful nature of this conduct, nor that it might constitute organized criminal activity. John Doe's perception was that he had been hired to do a job, and it was appropriate to be paid for the services rendered." However, I do want to point out that what John Doe is describing in this testimony here is in fact illegal under Georgia state law. That's because according to HB 316 in the state of Georgia, a voter can either personally mail a ballot for him or herself, or it can be delivered by an immediate family member, someone like a dad, a daughter, or mother, etc. Meaning that this practice of ballot harvesting is completely illegal within the state of Georgia. But it doesn't look like that actually stopped the individuals from doing it anyway. Here's how the testimony continues, quote, "John Doe's assignment included collecting ballots, both from voters in targeted neighborhoods and from NGOs that had their own ballot collection processes, delivering those ballots to other NGOs, picking up designated ballot bundles from the same group of NGOs, and depositing ballots into drop boxes spanning 6 counties in the Metro Atlanta area. Each Dropbox delivery would typically include between 5 to 20 ballots. John Doe described a payment validation process which involved taking cell phone pictures of the Dropbox where ballots were deposited. Participants were compensated, typically at a rate of $10 per ballot. John Doe stated that he had been paid directly by one of these NGOs. What is being described here is an illegal ballot harvesting scheme. It appears that these NGOs in the Atlanta area, they were soliciting as well as harvesting ballots, and then they were paying ballot mules $10 a pop in order to get them delivered into a box. Now, you might be looking at this testimony and you might say, hold on, Roman, that's pretty damning, but how do we know that it's actually true? Well, the election Watchdog group, they took this testimony and they used it as their basis for the second method of research. What they did was that they purchased commercially available cell phone ping data, which is also known as geospatial mobile device information. And as we mentioned in yesterday's episode, this cell phone data, it allows researchers to follow the footsteps of individual cell phone users throughout time. It's fairly accurate, and using this method, you can fairly effectively retrace a person's whole life, where they work, where they live, where they shop, where they eat, and so on. And that is exactly what True the Vote did here in Atlanta. And here's what they said they found. Quote, after reviewing this data, True the Vote was able to confirm certain patterns of activity around absentee ballot drop boxes as initially reported by John Doe. During the runoff election period, in 6 counties in and around Atlanta, 552,987 cell phones came within a narrowly defined distance of ballot drop boxes during our study period. However, 242 unique devices made repeat trips to drop boxes, averaging 23 trips each. These same 242 devices also went repeatedly, averaging 8 trips each to specific NGOs. These 242 individual devices went to drop boxes a total of 5,668 times, with approximately 40% of the visits occurring between the unusual hours of 12 a.m., meaning midnight, and 5 a.m., meaning that these researchers found 242 people making an average of 23 trips to ballot drop boxes, while at the same time visiting the office of an NGO at least 8 times each. Then, and this is where all their research really begins to come together, True the Vote subpoenaed the video surveillance footage of these drop boxes. And then they were able to line up the time codes of the cell phone ping tracking data with the video surveillance footage in order to see what was actually happening on the ground at the moments that these ballot mules were there. And frankly, it's exactly what you'd expect. Here's what they said they found. Quote, the video, though often grainy and sometimes distant, revealed numerous unusual behaviors. Individuals were observed attempting to deposit multiple ballots into the drop box. Sometimes the person was attempting to deposit so many ballots that they were unable to fit them all in, and the video shows ballots falling to the ground. Additionally, in our cursory review of surveillance video, it was confirmed that individuals made repeat visits to drop boxes. Cars were observed with out-of-state license plates, including rental cars, identifiable because of the sticker seal rental car companies affixed to the driver's side door. This in itself is not necessarily problematic. However, it is notable because these out-of-state and rental cars were driven by individuals who are also in our target study group of 242 devices. Consistent with John Doe's report regarding the proof necessary to receive payment, individuals were observed taking cell phone photos, not of themselves, but of their ballot deposits or of the drop box after the ballots had been deposited. Then, the researchers go on to say that a very curious phenomenon began to occur on December the 23rd. Here's what they wrote, quote, curiously, a change in behavior seemed to occur on or around December 23, 2020, the day after Arizona authorities announced that fingerprints on absentee ballot envelopes helped uncover an illegal ballot harvesting scheme in that state. After that announcement, individuals depositing ballots into drop boxes in Georgia are seen wearing blue surgical gloves. They often put them on just before picking up their stack of ballots and remove them as they exit the drop box area. You know that something is totally above board when people are wearing surgical gloves in order to hide their fingerprints. Wait. Hello? Hey Roman, it's me. Yeah, I wanted to let you know about the sponsor of today's episode, which is an awesome company called AMAC, which stands for the Association of Mature American Citizens. They are quite literally one of the fastest growing conservative organizations in America, especially for those who are over the age of 50. Although frankly, you can be any age to join AMAC. And their membership benefits include 3 different things. The first one is the money-saving benefits, because they give you a ton of discounts on things like restaurants, vitamins, oil changes, all types of stuff. You can check out their website for the full list of benefits. It's pretty exhaustive. The second benefit is that they give you a subscription to their bi-monthly magazine. It's called the AMAC magazine, and it's awesome. It has cutting-edge news as well as really, really crisp analysis. And then the third benefit that a lot of members say is their favorite benefit is that AMAC fights for you, for your values on Capitol Hill. Because as they say, there is currently a socialist storm brewing in this country, and AMAC is one of the largest organizations fighting back against it. And so if you care about the future of this country, consider joining the 2 million patriots who are already members of AMAC. Just head on over to amac.us/factsmatter. That's amac.us/factsmatter and join today. As they say, the memberships are great, but the cause is even greater. I'll also throw a link to AMAC down in the description box below. And now let's head on back to the studio. Regardless, it's also worth noting that even though Georgia state law requires that all Dropbox locations must be under 100% video surveillance footage, well, when True the Vote actually requested the footage, here's what it says, quote, county officials were only able to produce an estimated 20% of the surveillance video requested in the counties of Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, and Gwinnett. However, 20% of the footage still amounted to about 4 million minutes of video, which was enough for these researchers to figure out what was happening. And so what appears to have taken place, at least according to this evidence, is a large-scale ballot trafficking scheme wherein 242 people made 5,668 different trips to drop boxes, and they were likely paid $10 per ballot to do so. And based on the video footage, which shows ballot mules dropping off so many ballots that they sometimes can't even fit them all in, well, it might be the case that this scheme was responsible for potentially tens of thousands of votes, at least within the Atlanta metropolitan area. And then furthermore, given the fact that no one has been held accountable, well, there is no reason to assume that this type of scheme won't happen again in the future. Which brings us right back to the investigation, which was just approved by Georgia's State Elections Board. Specifically, about 10 days ago, they approved a subpoena which will allow the Secretary of State's office to both secure evidence as well as to compel testimony in this particular case. Meaning that they can now take the evidence that True the Vote found and compel the individuals involved to actually speak under oath. Here's specifically what the Georgia's Secretary of State said in a statement. We need to get a subpoena for the fella who this John Doe is. Was he paid? How much was he paid? And then who paid him? And we're going to follow the money. And we're going to get to the bottom of it. And we're going to prosecute this if we find that there's substance to it. And so we will just have to wait and see how this investigation progresses. If you would like to read this testimony for yourself, as well as to go through all the data and go through the methodology that the researchers used to get to their findings, I'll throw a link to this document as well as some of the other documents. It'll all be down there in the description box below this video, which, by the way, is right next to that like button, which I hope you take a moment to smash because you might not know this, but YouTube recently changed their like button such that when you smash it on your smartphone, well, confetti gets released. I suggest that you take a moment to test it out with this video. And now I wanted to let you know that over on Epic TV, just earlier today, I published an exclusive episode that you will not be finding here on YouTube that deals with the vaccine mandate currently being pushed by the U.S. military, specifically the U.S. Navy. And in that case, there were two relatively big developments. One is that a federal judge broadened the religious accommodation protection such that it no longer only covers about 35 U.S. Navy SEALs, but in fact, it covers about 4,000 members of the U.S. Navy who are seeking for religious accommodation from the vaccine mandate. However, there was a recent setback at the level of the U.S. Supreme Court. And so in order to unpack what's really happening, in order to get to the bottom of what's happening in this case, I took the opportunity to speak with Mr. Mike Berry, who is the lawyer representing the actual U.S. Navy SEALs who are filing the suit against the U.S. government. And we discussed what's happening in this case, what the future of the vaccine mandate within the U.S. military can look like, as well as what the implications are for the broader public at large.
When the court issued an injunction back in January, it only extended to those 35 people that were named in the case. But now, with the class-wide certification, what that does is converts it into a class action lawsuit. So this will protect potentially everybody in the Navy who has requested a religious accommodation from the military vaccine mandate. And I think this is part of the reason why. People who are serving in the military want to know that the government, that the United States military has their back. If they're going to put their lives on the line to defend this country and defend our freedom, the very least we can do is ensure that they don't lose the very freedoms that they're protecting. But that's not happening right now. We have to have that in a free country if we're going to continue to be the nation that we've always known as the United States. They're using it as a way of punishing them, which is unconstitutional and it's illegal. When you serve in the military, you give up some of your freedom, some of your autonomy. You don't give up your religious freedom.
If you want to check out that exclusive episode, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you check it out because, frankly, what we discussed has implications well into the future for this country. Again, that link will be right there at the very top of the description box. Hope you check it out. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed and stay free.